Have you ever been so desperate for sleep that you'd do anything for a few quiet minutes? I have. And let me tell you, nothing prepares you for the torture of sharing a tiny room with someone who snores like a broken engine. It's loud. It's constant. It's impossible to ignore. And when that person tells you it's not their problem, something inside you snaps. That's the moment everything changes. My name is Ashley. What matters is what happened to me on that cruise ship. What matters is how far I had to go just to get a single night of rest. And what matters most? The moment I decided to give my roommate a taste of her own medicine. This is the story of how I went from being the nicest, most understanding person you'd ever meet, to someone who recorded every single snore, every single gasp, every single choking sound my roommate made in her sleep. And then played it back to her. Over and over again. Working on a cruise ship sounds glamorous, doesn't it? Traveling the world, performing for audiences every night, waking up in a new port every few days. But the reality is this: you live in a cabin that's barely bigger than a closet. You share that space with another person. You work exhausting hours, sometimes starting at 9 in the morning and not finishing until 11 at night. And when you finally get to collapse into bed, you need that sleep more than anything in the world. I'm a performer on the ship. I sing, I dance, I entertain hundreds of people every single day. As performers, we got a special privilege. We got to pick our roommates. I thought I had chosen well. Her name was Sarah. We chatted during training, seemed to get along great. When she suggested we room together, I didn't hesitate. Our cabin had bunk beds, and I took the top one. Our room was positioned near the anchor, which meant when the ship docked every 2 to 4 days, it got loud. Really loud. But I didn't care. I could sleep through anything. Or at least, I thought I could. The first night in our new cabin, I climbed into my top bunk ready to crash hard. Sarah was already in her bed below me, and within minutes of turning off the lights, I heard her breathing change. Then it started. At first, it was just a soft rumbling. But then it got louder. And louder. And then I realized with growing horror what I was hearing. Sarah was snoring. But this wasn't normal snoring. This was industrial strength, earthquake-level noise blasting through our tiny cabin. I'm talking about a sound so loud, so jarring, so absolutely unbelievable that I genuinely thought something was broken. That first night, I barely slept 2 hours. And here's what made it even worse: Sarah didn't just snore. She choked. Like, actually choked in her sleep. The first time I heard it, I practically launched myself out of the top bunk. I was scrambling down the ladder in the dark, ready to perform CPR or call for help because I genuinely believed my roommate was having a medical emergency. I got down there, breathing hard, ready to save her life. And she was just sleeping. Peacefully. The choking sound stopped, and she rolled over and started snoring again. I climbed back into my bunk, hands still shaking from the adrenaline, and realized that this was her normal. I want you to understand something. I'm not the type of person who complains. I pride myself on being adaptable. So I didn't immediately run to Sarah and demand she fix her snoring. Instead, I decided to try to fix it myself. The next day, when we docked at port, I bought heavy-duty, construction-grade earplugs. That night, I put them in, feeling hopeful. Sarah's snoring started right on schedule. And I could still hear every single sound. The earplugs did nothing. It was like trying to block out a thunderstorm with tissue paper. Okay, I thought. Earplugs aren't enough. I had these big over-the-ear headphones. Professional-grade ones I used for practicing music. I put them on, connected them to my phone, and started playing music. Loud music. Guess what? I could still hear her snoring. Through the headphones. Through the music. Do you know what else is incredibly loud? The sound of a massive cruise ship docking. The anchor dropping, the engines reversing, the creaking and groaning of metal. Our cabin was right near the anchor. And even with all that noise, even with the anchor dropping and the ship shaking, I could still hear Sarah snoring. Sleep deprivation is no joke. It affects everything. Your mood, your performance, your health, your sanity. I started messing up during shows. Missing cues. Forgetting lyrics. I was irritable with everyone. I was falling apart, and Sarah was sleeping like a baby every single night, completely unaware of the chaos she was causing. So I decided it was time to have a conversation. I found her in the crew lounge one day and sat down next to her, trying to keep my voice calm and friendly. I explained that I'd been having a really hard time getting rest because she snored pretty loudly at night. I mentioned the choking sounds that worried me. I suggested we could figure out solutions together. Maybe she could see the ship's doctor, or we could try different sleeping positions. Her smile faded. She said she'd never had anyone complain about her snoring before. I told her it was pretty intense, that I'd tried earplugs and headphones and nothing worked. Then she laughed. Not a friendly laugh. A dismissive one. She said it couldn't be that bad. I insisted it really was, that I was barely sleeping and it was affecting my work. And then she shrugged. Like actually shrugged. She said that since she was sleeping fine, she didn't really see it as a problem. I stared at her, not quite believing what I was hearing. I asked her to maybe see a doctor, that this could be sleep apnea or something serious. She said she felt fine and thought I was just being too sensitive about noise. Then she said those 4 words that changed everything: "You'll get used to it." She got up and walked away, leaving me sitting there feeling more alone and frustrated than I'd ever felt. That's when I realized she wasn't going to help me. Because in her mind, if she was sleeping fine, then there was no problem. Never mind that I was suffering. I went back to our cabin that day and felt something shift inside me. I had tried being nice. I had tried being understanding. I had tried communicating like a reasonable adult. And I had been completely dismissed. Let me paint you a picture of the day that finally broke me. I woke up at 9 in the morning for an early rehearsal. We were adding new numbers to the show, which meant learning choreography and running through songs multiple times. Rehearsal ran until noon. Then afternoon sound checks. Then costume fittings that lasted way too long. Then hair and makeup. Then the pre-show meeting. Then the actual show at 7. The show itself was 2 hours of high-energy performing. Singing at the top of my lungs, dancing until my legs burned. The show ended at 9, but we had to stick around for photos with passengers, then help with the strike. By the time I finally got back to my cabin, it was 11 p.m. I had been working for 14 straight hours. And I had to be up at 6 a.m. the next morning. That meant I had 7 hours to sleep. 7 precious hours to recover. I took the fastest shower of my life, set 3 alarms, and climbed into my bunk. I needed this sleep. I deserved this sleep. And then, right on cue, the snoring started. I'm not going to lie to you. I almost cried. This wasn't fair. This wasn't right. I lay awake for hours, my exhausted brain unable to shut down because of the constant noise. Around 2 a.m., I finally managed to fall into a light, restless sleep. My phone alarm went off at 6 a.m. I had gotten 2 hours of sleep. 2 hours. After a 14-hour workday. Before another full day of the same. I lay there in my bunk, listening to my alarms go off, and I made a decision. I was done being the understanding one. I was done suffering in silence. She had refused to acknowledge the problem. She had refused to help find a solution. Fine. I would show her exactly what she was putting me through. That morning, as I dragged myself out of bed, I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recorder app. That night, when Sarah started snoring, I hit record. Have you ever really listened to someone snoring? Sarah's snoring was like an entire symphony of terrible. It started with a low rumble that built in volume until it reached a crescendo. Then there'd be a brief pause, just long enough to give you hope. Then it would start again, even louder. Every few minutes, she'd throw in a high-pitched wheeze. Then there were the snorts. Random, explosive bursts of sound. And the worst part? The choking. Every 10 minutes or so, the breathing would just stop. Complete silence. And then, after what felt like forever, there'd be this horrible gasping, choking sound as she sucked in air. I recorded for over 3 hours that night. I made sure to capture every variation, every choking episode, every particularly loud burst of noise. When I finally stopped recording, I put on my headphones and listened back. It was worse than I remembered. I saved that recording like it was made of gold. Over the next couple of days, I kept recording. Different nights, different sessions. And every morning, I woke up exhausted, barely functional, running on empty. About a week after I'd started recording, I came back to the cabin one afternoon hoping for a nap. Sarah was there. She looked up from her phone and smiled, saying she was really tired and was going to take a nap. Something inside me clicked. She was going to rest peacefully while I, exhausted beyond measure, wouldn't be able to do the same because even during the day, she snored. I said okay and came into the room. Sarah settled into her bunk and closed her eyes. Within minutes, the snoring began. I pulled out my phone, connected it to my portable Bluetooth speaker, positioned it on my locker aimed at her bunk, and pressed play. The sound that erupted was exactly what I'd been living with for weeks. The rumbling, the whistling, the choking, the snorting. All of it, at full volume, filling our tiny cabin. Sarah shot up in bed like she'd been electrocuted. Her eyes were wide, her face a mixture of shock and confusion. Then she saw me. Standing there calmly, phone in hand, playing her own sounds back to her. We just stared at each other. I didn't say anything. Didn't smile. Didn't explain. Recognition slowly dawned on her face. She asked if that was her. I still didn't respond. Just let the recording play. Another choking sound came through the speaker. Her face went pale. She told me to turn it off. I didn't move. She said it louder. I reached over and paused the recording. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah was staring at me like I'd lost my mind, asking what was wrong with me. I looked at her calmly and said, "Well, this is you snoring. And you said it's not a big deal. So why should I turn it off?" Her mouth opened and closed. She said it was different, that she was trying to sleep. I said quietly, "So am I. Every single night. And this is what I hear. 4 hours and hours. While you sleep peacefully, completely unaware." She said I couldn't just play that while she was trying to rest, that it was insane. I asked if it really was, pointing out that all I was doing was giving her a taste of what I went through every night. She'd said I should just get used to it. So here she could get used to it. Sarah's face turned red. She said some choice words, called me petty and childish. She said I had no right to treat her this way. And then she grabbed her phone and pillow and stormed out of the cabin, slamming the door so hard the whole room shook. I stood there in the sudden silence, my heart pounding. I'd done it. And honestly, I felt no regret. None at all. For the next 3 days, every single time Sarah came to our cabin to rest, I played her recordings back to her. That evening when she came back late, I waited 10 minutes until she was drifting off, then pressed play. She shot up, asked if I was kidding, and left. The next morning when I came back for a break, she was there trying to nap. As soon as her breathing changed, I played another recording. She didn't even say anything, just grabbed her things and left. That afternoon, same thing. That evening, same thing. By day 3, Sarah was barely even trying to use our cabin anymore. She was sleeping in other people's rooms, on couches in crew areas, anywhere she could avoid me. Meanwhile, I was finally getting some sleep. With Sarah gone most of the time, I could actually rest. My performance improved dramatically. I had energy again. But I knew this couldn't last forever. On the afternoon of day 3, I got called to a meeting with our manager, David. When I entered his office, Sarah was already there. She didn't look at me. David asked Sarah to explain what was happening. She immediately launched in, saying I'd been harassing her for 3 days, playing loud, horrible noises every time she tried to rest. She said she was doing it on purpose to torture her and keep her from sleeping. She said she couldn't work properly when exhausted, that I was making the cabin completely unlivable. David looked at me and asked if it was true. I said some of it was, but there was a lot she was leaving out. I explained calmly that the sounds I'd been playing were recordings of Sarah snoring. That for the past month, Sarah had been snoring so loudly that I couldn't sleep. Snoring I could hear over earplugs, over headphones with music, even over the ship docking. That it wasn't just loud, it was concerning because she choked in her sleep. That I'd been getting maybe 2 or 3 hours of sleep a night. Sarah interjected that it wasn't her fault, that she couldn't control how she slept. David told her to let me finish. I continued, explaining that I'd tried talking to Sarah about it weeks ago, asking if we could work together to find solutions. That she'd completely dismissed me, telling me that since she was sleeping fine, it wasn't a problem. That she'd told me to just get used to it. David looked at Sarah and asked if that was true. She shifted uncomfortably and admitted she'd told me she slept fine, but insisted I was exaggerating. I said I had recordings and asked if he'd like to hear them. I pulled out my phone and played one of the recordings. The sound that came out was unmistakable. The loud rumbling, the whistling, the snorting, the choking. David's eyebrows went up. He listened for about 30 seconds, then stopped it and handed back my phone. He looked at Sarah and asked if that's what she sounded like every night. Her face was red. She muttered that she didn't know it was that bad. David asked if she told me about her snoring before they moved in together. She said she didn't think it mattered. David sighed and leaned back, summarizing the situation. Sarah snores loudly, keeping her roommate awake and affecting her work. When addressed, Sarah dismissed the concern and refused solutions. In response, I recorded the snoring and played it back to make her understand. He looked at both of us for confirmation. We both nodded. David shook his head, saying this was one of the more creative roommate disputes he dealt with. He told Sarah directly that snoring that loud could be a serious medical issue, that she should have seen the doctor immediately when I brought it up. He pointed out that she didn't think about how her actions affected someone else, didn't think about her own health, and didn't think to mention the significant issue before moving in. He turned to me and said that playing recordings to keep my roommate from sleeping wasn't exactly mature either. I responded carefully that I'd tried the mature way, that I'd communicated clearly and been completely shut down. That I was desperate and wanted Sarah to understand what I was experiencing every night. David was quiet, then announced his decision. We'd both be moved to new roommates within a couple of days. We both looked relieved. But he wasn't finished. He looked at Sarah and said he was requiring her to see the ship's doctor before the end of the week, that it wasn't optional and would go on her record if she didn't comply. He also told her that going forward, she needed to disclose her snoring up front to any future roommates. Sarah nodded quietly. He told me he appreciated that I'd tried communication first and understood I was at my breaking point, but that in the future, I should come to him sooner. I thanked him. 2 days later, David gave us our new room assignments. I was moving in with Maria, another performer who didn't snore. Sarah was moving in with someone from guest services who was a very heavy sleeper. Perfect matches for both of us. The moving process was quick. We didn't help each other and basically avoided each other during the whole thing. When I walked into my new cabin and met Maria, she immediately said that if she ever did anything to make it hard for me to sleep or feel comfortable, I should tell her right away because it was my space too. I almost cried. That first night, I climbed into my bunk with genuine excitement. Maria got into her bed below, we said goodnight, and she turned off the lights. And then, silence. Beautiful, peaceful, blessed silence. I could hear Maria breathing normally, gently, rhythmically. I fell asleep within minutes and slept for 8 solid hours. I woke up naturally, feeling more rested than I had in over a month. I actually got emotional about it, crying tears of gratitude for finally having what I desperately needed. Life transformed after that. My work performance shot back up. I had energy during shows. I could remember choreography. Maria and I became great friends, but when it was time to sleep, we respected that. About 2 weeks later, I ran into Sarah in the crew cafeteria. We ended up in line next to each other, and there was an awkward moment. Finally, Sarah spoke, telling me she'd gone to the doctor like David said. They diagnosed her with severe sleep apnea and were getting her a CPAP machine. She said if she hadn't gotten it checked, it could have led to serious heart problems. She looked uncomfortable and then apologized. She said she'd been a terrible roommate and should have listened when I told her there was a problem. She should have cared that I wasn't sleeping. I thanked her and said I appreciated the apology. I also apologized for having to play those recordings, explaining I'd been at my breaking point. She said she got it now, that her new roommate mentioned hearing her sometimes before the CPAP, which made her realize how bad it really was and how awful it must have been for me. I told her I hoped the CPAP helped, and I really meant it. So what did I learn from all of this? First, speak up for your needs. Don't wait until you're at your breaking point. Suffering in silence doesn't make you noble, it just makes you exhausted and miserable. Second, when someone tells you that you're affecting them negatively, listen. Really listen. Don't dismiss them just because you're not experiencing the problem yourself. Third, sometimes people don't understand the impact of their actions until they experience it themselves. Words alone aren't always enough. Fourth, creative solutions aren't always the mature ones, but sometimes they're necessary. Was playing her snoring back the most grown-up approach? Probably not. But it worked. It made her understand in a way conversation couldn't. Fifth, always disclose important information to roommates up front. Surprising someone with a major issue after moving in together is unfair and sets everyone up for conflict. And finally, never underestimate the importance of sleep. My need for sleep wasn't me being sensitive or difficult. It was a basic human requirement, and I had every right to advocate for it. This story is really about boundaries and self-advocacy. It's about what happens when someone crosses a line and doesn't realize it, and what you do when your voice isn't being heard. Your needs matter. Your comfort matters. Your health matters. You don't have to just accept someone else's behavior when it's genuinely harming you, especially when you've tried to address it reasonably and been shut down. Standing up for yourself isn't always pretty or comfortable. Sometimes it means being the difficult person. Sometimes people will call you petty or dramatic or too sensitive. But those people aren't the ones lying awake at 2 in the morning, exhausted and desperate. Those people aren't living your reality. You are. And sometimes, when all else fails, you have to get creative. You have to make people uncomfortable because comfortable approaches haven't worked. That's what I did with those recordings. I made Sarah experience her own impact. Was it revenge? Yes. But it was also education. It was also advocacy. It was also desperation. And ultimately, it led to positive change for both of us. If you're in a situation where someone is affecting you negatively and won't listen, don't just suffer. Don't just accept it. Don't let someone else's comfort come at the complete expense of your well-being. Speak up. Be heard. And if conventional methods don't work, get creative. You deserve to sleep. You deserve peace. You deserve respect. And you shouldn't have to compromise on your basic needs because someone else refuses to acknowledge their impact. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about hurting someone. It's about making them understand. It's about holding up a mirror and saying, "This is what you sound like, this is what you're doing, this is what I've been trying to tell you." And hoping that this time, finally, they'll listen. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and share the video. Your support helps us create more stories for you.